And welcome to another episode of Your Next Favorite Movie. I am your host, Josh G. And today I have a returning guest. Please welcome back. You heard him on the Dune episode. He is a man of many talents, Chip Sebastian.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on again, Josh. I appreciate it. Hope everybody's doing all right out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I hope the same for you. So I know you have a short film. I don't know if it's out yet now. I know you talked about it last time, but
yeah, when I was on the last episode, we were in the middle of filming it. We wrapped it. And Don Samandel, who has a company here in Lexington, High Road Productions, he is cutting it, so it's in post now, and we're hoping to have it out hopefully November, maybe December. It depends on how the holidays go, but then we'll take it around to some film festivals and just have some fun with it and put it on probably for free, YouTube and so on. But it's a nice little serial killer film that I wrote. It's about 12 minutes long, and my friend Fred Ziegler, who I've known for like 30 years, he plays the guy in it, the serial killer, and man, he's just it's he plays it that way. It's really really good. But anyway, yeah. So the working title of it was Per Annum.
That's what I remembered.
Yeah, when I originally wrote it, but we were thinking that we might change the name of the film to Always in Our Hearts. And the reason that came about was because, number one, Per Annum that idea was taken out of the script as we were doing rewrites, and so it sort of makes sense, but not as much as it did originally. And then the other thing is that when we were filming, we we have this really beautiful cemetery here in Lexington, the Lexington Cemetery, which is on the National Registry, and so the whole thing takes place in a cemetery. And so I had called the Lexington Cemetery and I said, "Hey, we're doing this short film." And the guy was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we'd love to help you. It sounds great, get some exposure for the cemetery, blah, blah, blah." And then I was like, "Oh, and it's about a serial killer." And he's like, "I don't think we can do that." And so anyway, my friend Don, he I won't say the name of this other cemetery just to be nice about things, but the cemetery where we shot it, it's one of these cemeteries where you of course get sort of a creepy feeling because it's there's tombs everywhere and all that, but the thing is the whole cemetery has these like fake flowers on all the graves that are part of the grave service that you pay for. So literally all of the graves have these like fake, sort of Walmart looking flowers on them,
Yeah.
and so there's this sort of chintziness about it, or this there's this other creep factor to it besides just death and decay and all that. It's really it just has a really weird sense. And then there were these like really almost exorcist level statues in the place.
Oh, wow.
This huge cross and anyway, man, it's a total creep fest. It really is. And and what's weird is like you'll go along and you'll see like the waste baskets, which are wire baskets. They're like full of these fake flowers. Like people have taken the fake flowers and thrown them away. It's really a bizarre place, but it wound up being perfect for our quirky little film. And so anyway, yeah, the working title very likely will change to Always in Our Hearts, and hopefully it'll be out in the next month or two. Really looking forward to it, man. And yeah, I love getting something in the can, and getting it done. But yeah, so thank you for letting me talk about it here. And also, since I talked to you last, I have launched my website, which is just chipsebastian.com. chipsebastian.com. And the stuff that I've done, over the years, there's like a partial filmography on there, my demo reels for the voice work that I do and other stuff too. But when the film is finished, it will be available on the website for free as well.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And yeah, and there are some other films on there that I've done over the years already. But yeah, if your viewers go on there and check it out, chipsebastian.com, drop me a line, say, yes, this film was good, Chip, or this film was dog doo. Can't believe I wasted my time on it. You never know, man. So anyway.
All right. So Chip, actually, before we get into it, your last episode, we talked about David Lynch's Dune. And I know you've seen the new Dune. So why don't you just give your brief thoughts on the new Dune on here so that everybody can hear them?
My wife and I went to see it yesterday. And as we were discussing before we started, here in Lexington, they've not too long ago opened an IMAX theater. And so I decided to throw down the money and, get the full deal. And it was, in my opinion, it was the finest sci-fi that I have seen in many years. It was original. It was, visually, I was blown away, man. I can't recommend it enough. I didn't know going in that it was chapter 1. Like when that came up on the opening credits, I was like, chapter 1, what's up, And so when I got home after I saw the movie, I started reading about it, and apparently they are hoping that it does well enough so they can film the second part of it, which I feel it probably will. I think it's already raked in 30, 40, 50 million or something, so I hope it will, because that would be really odd to not do the second part and then it ends where it ended. But the nice thing about it is, even like when you and I talked last time about David Lynch's version, which was not the theatrical version of Dune back in 1984, when they had cobbled together, a lot of the footage years later and put it on television, that was supposed to be not exactly David Lynch's version, but a lot closer to David Lynch's version of what he wanted before he took his name off of it. It still, there were holes in the story. And there were holes in the story partially because it's just a monster book to tackle. There's a lot going on there. It'd be sort of like, filming a lot of literature that there's just a lot of story.
Right.
And so, that had its shortcomings. And then of course the tech had its shortcomings because it's 1984. It was so great then, when I saw it initially, but you look at it now and it's like, but it's still fun, right? So anyway, if people are wondering about, oh, should I go see Dune? I don't know. I say go for it. I found it to be awesome, and the story actually makes sense, and it's more like the book, than David Lynch's version. The other thing too, I don't think I mentioned this on the time before, Josh, but I for a long time on VHS, I had this little documentary that they had done on Dune when it came out, and it was, and it showed them filming in New Mexico. It had interviews with Kyle MacLachlan and Lynch, and showed a lot of behind the scenes footage with Jose Ferrer and all these other actors. But Frank Herbert, he died not too long after that original Dune was released, and they had interviewed him, and he was saying, I'm not worried about what they're doing with my movie. I'm not this writer that's henpecking everybody trying to get the story just right and all that stuff. but the thing is it wasn't really complete in any way. Now I love the original version. I mean, this, but I'm just saying it's not. If you're looking for it to be true to the book,
Right.
you're going to be, disappointed. It's kind of like people are like, Kubrick's version of The Shining is so different than the book, and I'm like, yeah, it's because it's Kubrick. Don't go in there doing a book comparison on it, because
Yeah.
you're going to be disappointed.
Yep.
So anyway, that's something to consider. And but the only reason I say all that is because back then a lot of people were like, well, the story doesn't totally make sense. There's like, it doesn't seem like it had, and that's why. It's because there was a lot left out, and a lot of that was just because it's a lot of book. I mean, you probably would have needed a 4 or 5 hour film to even get close to that. So anyway, with this chapter 1 of this new one running at almost 3 hours, I'm suspecting chapter 2, should it happen, is going to be 2.5, 3 hours. That puts it at 5+ hours, which is probably a little more realistic about getting the the story done. But man, I don't see how they're going to do it, because I mean, I know they were so successful doing that with it, right? With chapter 1 and 2, and like doing chapter 1 but sort of being not so sure of chapter 2 was going to happen, right? But I mean, just putting all that stuff back together to get a cohesive thing between the two films, man, I wouldn't want to be the person on production doing that. That's what a nightmare. And I mean, to me, it'd be a lot better doing it like they did Lord of the Rings, where you just film all 3 things and then release them 1 year at a time.
Right.
But we've already got it done, because who knows who's going to die, in between now and then. Who knows if a set burns down and we can't rebuild it or something. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, but anyway, sorry, man, you got me going again.
Oh yeah, you're good. All right, so now we're gonna transition to the movie of the night, and we're going to another famous David, who's famous for his vision and the way he does movies, and we're going back to 1981 with David Cronenberg Scanners. So when did you first see this?
Man, I'm wanting to say that it had to have been on HBO or Cinemax in the early 80s. Yeah, it had to have been on cable. That's probably where I first saw that. I can't remember if I said it last time I was here, but like there were a lot of movies that they would show on HBO and Cinemax. I mean, back in those days, if something was pretty gory or it had a lot of blood and spatter to it or whatever, they would label it R automatically. And so that meant that it couldn't really be on basic cable, which had maybe 30 or 40 channels on it. And so you could buy these premium channels at the time. But then some of us got them for free because some of us had dads who were TV and radio repairmen and knew how to build parabolic dishes and receive the the stations for free that were available at the time. And at that time, there was HBO, there was Cinemax, and Cinemax had most of like the skin flicks,
Right.
So if you're looking for some soft core stuff, that's where that was. And then Showtime was the other one. And then there was the movie channel, which was like an early incarnation of what later became Ted Turner's channel, and they showed basically all, a lot of classic movies and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and newer movies too, but they had, old Jack Nicholson movies, things like that. So anyway, those 4 channels were the main ones that you could get, and we had them early. and they had a lot of really oddball stuff on there, and then they had sort of cutting edge stuff. But that's where I would have first seen Scanners. Yeah, probably 83 or 4, maybe 82, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think I watched this for the first time, if not within the last 10, definitely within the last 15. It was definitely mid to late aughts before I saw it.
Well, what was your impression of it?
I went in looking for the gore. So as we know, yeah,
you're always looking for the gore.
I'm looking for the gore.
I want to see blood.
Exactly. I mean, let's be honest. This movie has one of the most famous gifts ever with the head explosion.
Oh, man.
And I bet over half the people, if you ask what movie that came from, they wouldn't be able to tell you. They just like using the GIF. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of weird because that has become sort of an iconic image. But
right.
Yeah.
And I would guess that most people you asked have no idea where it's from. So that'd be my guess.
I think you're right. No, I fall into it partially because of my age, sort of assuming that people know, a lot of cultural references. And of course I teach a lot. And so a lot of times when I'll crack a joke, and then I realize, these people are 25 years old. I just crack a joke because, it's my own references,
right.
And then I realize later they don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
and it's the same thing in reverse, a lot of times, Chip, you should get on TikTok, and I'm like, what's TikTok? So it really works both ways. It's not just, right. Me to them, but yeah, I think you're right. There's probably a lot of stuff like that too.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would think a lot of things that have kept going, like, Freddy's bladed fingers or the hockey mask or something. I mean, people would know. I would hope they would know.
Anyway. I would hope they know, at least those. My goodness.
Unless you got somebody that's been living on the moon for the last 20 years. But
all right, Chip. So let's why don't you tell everyone who hasn't seen it what exactly Scanners about?
Well, Scanners is about it's about a doctor, which in the film is played by Patrick McGoohan, who was a very well-known actor. And this doctor had, in the 50s and 60s, been experimenting with patients with a new drug. And the drug created what were later to be called scanners. And scanners were people who actually had let's call it a heightened ability mentally. And that included telepathy. It included psychokinesis, being able to move things around with your mind. It included being able to set fires. It included, having control over someone enough that they would go so far as to kill themselves. I mean, it was just a heightened mental state. But the problem was that with most of them, what came along with it was insanity. And so the story opens with Stephen Lack, who was in several of Cronenberg's films. He was later on in Dead Ringers, and he was just a Canadian actor that happened to be there when Cronenberg was getting going. But he played the lead, and Cameron, and he's a homeless person, and he's a scanner, and he doesn't know what's wrong with him, but he really can't be around people because people's thoughts are so pervasive in his own head, he can't get them out, and so it'd be the case that people would probably think you're just a multiple personality case if that really were something that was happening,
right.
And it could rightly be said that you were a multiple personality case because you got a lot of voices in your head, that are not yours per se. So anyway, So yeah, he is a homeless person, and but he is tracked down by a group that is looking for scanners and is trying to turn them so they can build an army and, like all good evil people, strive for world domination. And his brother, we find out later, is his brother. Michael Ironsides, who's another great actor. He is the evil force in the whole thing. Actually, he's the one who makes the guy's head explode.
Yep.
In the beginning scenes, he goes in and they're looking for a demonstration. They're probably thinking that they're just going to make the guy's, nosebleed or something. Of course, winds up popping his head like a, like a gourd, And so anyway, yeah, that's pretty much the setting for the story. Of course, there's a love interest there. Jennifer, what's her name? Jennifer O'Neill. Yeah, who was famous for 2 minutes back in the 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, she did a lot of soap opera stuff and everything, but
okay.
So I mean, she was in some other movies, but no, I doubt anybody would remember her today.
I was to say, I knew when I watched, I didn't recognize her. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's so few of these actors that have staying power. I mean, and that truly become iconic.
Right.
Like an Al Pacino or a Jack Nicholson or something. Anyway, yeah, that's sort of the setting for it, and has a lot of other nasty characters in it too. But some of them are government, some of them are government who are being very influenced by Michael Ironside's character, who is trying to round up all the scanners. But the important thing to remember too is that most of the other scanners are weaker than Michael Ironside and his brother. And the reason for that is because they were the first ones.
Right.
So, like any good mutant, following, in the line of like the original X-Men and so on, the older they get, the more powerful they become in their special ability, whatever it is.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's the scene for it. I forgot who wrote the book to Scanners.
I don't know.
Yeah, but it did come from a novel. But it's perfect for somebody like Cronenberg, who is, he's kind of made his whole career on these really odd movies. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't even, even though, back then he was thought of as kind of like a, I don't know, just a horror filmmaker, let's say.
Yeah.
Which meant something different then than it does now, by the way. But he, the thing is, since then, he's just done so many other films that are there. I wouldn't call them horror necessarily. A lot of them do have a lot of gross stuff in them. But they're more like, this really odd, bizarre, twisted tales that kind of stick in your craw, and as rough as Scanners is. Oh, and by the way, the other thing that makes Scanners kind of turn your stomach a little bit at some points and make you feel ill at ease is the soundtrack, which was Howard Shore. Howard Shore went on to do many, many, many soundtracks, including Silence of the Lambs, by the way. So, there you go. Right. So, yeah, you have some awesome music coming in on some really good visual storytelling. But, no, but I was going to say, though, as gross as Scanners is, there's other stuff in Cronenberg's career that's far more disturbing to me, So,
oh, absolutely. But my favorite Cronenberg is actually not a horror movie, and that is A History of Violence.
Oh, that's a great movie.
Yeah. That would probably be my favorite Cronenberg.
Now, why is that one your favorite?
I think I just like the story more. I mean, very simple story of a small town man who's just trying to defend a place, and then all of a sudden this back history comes out, and I don't know. Yeah, I can't explain why, but I will watch that anytime.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I will just sit and watch that at any point. I think it's great performances by Viggo Mortensen, Ed Harris, Maria Bella.
Oh
I mean,
man, I love Viggo Mortensen. He's just what a talented, exceptional guy, man. I mean, and not just as an actor, but as a painter and writer, and um, he speaks like 5 languages. I mean, it's
oh
just
wow,
yeah. There's if you ever go on YouTube and check him out, man, you'll see he's like multilingual. I mean, but I just what a great character. I mean, but yeah, that is a terrific movie, man. It's um, and it is disturbing.
it is disturbing. I mean,
Yeah.
especially I mean that opening death scene. I mean, or not the opening, but the death scene that catapults the rest of the movie. It's
Yeah.
violent like Cronenberg. I mean, it's definitely very Cronenbergian when you see that part. But
Well, did you see that other one that they made pretty close to it with Mortensen, Eastern Promises?
yeah, right after it, yeah,
Yeah. See, I love that too. I mean,
that was good too.
yeah,
I know a lot of people prefer that over History of Violence, but I prefer a History of
I
Violence.
like it. I like them both, man.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah. Yeah. But that scene in the Turkish bath with him,
Oh yeah, yeah.
that was just raw.
Raw. Yeah, raw is
Yeah.
a good way to put it. All right, well, we're here to talk about why do you love Scanners so much? What is it about Scanners that made you want to come talk about this one?
Uh, well, there's the obvious thing of its history, and I mean, like Dune, it's just part of my childhood, really. So I have a special affinity for some of these movies that I was just taking in during my formative years. But I think the other thing, because I mean, really, that's not enough to have a show on. In truth, you know what I mean, because somebody could have been watching, freaking Plan 9 from outer space and saying, yeah, let's do a show on that. And so, well, who cares about Plan 9 from outer space? But and there are people out there who do.
Hold on now.
I thought that one might make you.
Yeah, I pride myself that
The audience
every movie is someone's favorite movie, and that's why I like to give them a chance to keep this show film positive.
Well, I think too, though, that I think it's actually the same thing with literature too. It's there are a lot of great things that would not be possible without other things, and I think that's a big that was one of the reasons that I like with Scanners. I just think it was a very influential film, especially in the horror genre. And it, even though you could watch it today and think this has a little bit of cheese on it, but some of that is just the time in which it was made, but it's still a very disturbing film when you watch it. So it does have staying power, it still holds up, in other words, unlike a whole lot of films that are, from that period or even years after. So there's that reason for me liking it. Yeah. I mean, honestly, probably about 80 to 90% of Cronenberg's stuff I really, really like. There are a few films that I thought weren't good. Like he did that more recent film, Spider, with
Ray Fiennes. Yeah. I didn't see it, but I remember it.
Yeah, I didn't really, it just wasn't that interesting to me, which is probably why nobody talks about it. It's just really not, and so, but what's weird to me too, and I think it's kind of weird because like we were talking about Lynch before, and Lynch, from the get-go was weird and offbeat, and and he's always been that way. I mean, from Eraserhead on. Cronenberg, he's been depraved from the beginning too, but his films started to take on more of a maybe we could say avant-garde or abstract thing as they went along. Like a good example of that, actually two examples that, and you don't see them hardly at all anymore, were his version of Naked Lunch, which
Peter Weller.
Yeah, which nobody talks about that film anymore except for to criticize it. I thought it was great. I thought it was weird. Now, it's another one of those things though, like if for those who've read Naked Lunch, you don't sit here and go, yeah, we're going to squeeze everything in Naked Lunch into an hour and 40 minutes or whatever. It's just not, and it's a very, very abstract work anyway. Another example of that is Crash, the James Spader Crash.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That came up recently on the show.
Yeah. And, which was from a novel too. But, when you start talking about people who are sexually aroused by deformity and grotesqueries, and particularly with car crashes,
right?
That's kind of out there, man. That's a little different than, oh yeah, we've got a guy with a machete that's coming in, with it's just different. And that's kind of what I'm talking about, where Cronenberg gets more and more into the abstract stuff. The other one too that doesn't get mentioned from around that same period was In Butterfly, which was In Butterfly. He made a film of that. That originally was a very well-known play that made it to Broadway. It was David Henry Wong, who was a famous playwright, still a famous playwright, and played on Broadway forever. John Lithgow started that role, and then Jeremy Irons did it in the film. But it's like nobody talks about those films of Cronenberg anymore. I mean, if you talk about Cronenberg, usually people are like, "Oh yeah, he did The Fly, right?"
Yeah.
And so you get, a lot of his finest work to me is outside of his more popular stuff. But some of that's because I'm weird and I like that kind of thing. But so how it is, man. I mean, if you're a film person, if you're a cineast is the word for it, which if you said that to somebody, they might kick you out of wherever you are. I'm a cineast. Get the hell out of here. What's wrong with you? But yeah, I mean, if you just love film, and you a lot of times you have to go digging. I mean, if you really are into it,
right.
Otherwise, you'll probably just have sort of a superficial knowledge of it, and that's okay too. I mean, I'm that way with sports. If somebody starts talking about football, I'll be like, yeah, the Steelers were big in the 70s, and I'm like, and like that's kind of where it ends for me, man, and it used to be, I would try to BS my way through it, I'm standing around with a bunch of dudes and I'm like, yeah, boy, the Cowboys really did it the other night, didn't they? And then, I was probably like 24 or something. I'm like, how the hell am I doing this? So anymore, if that comes up, I'm like, look, you're talking to the wrong person about sports, man. And something that's tough here in Lexington because everybody bleeds blue. I mean, like you've got to know something about Kentucky Wildcats, about college basketball, or like your scum on a stick, And so anyway, sorry, man, I'm digressing, but did I answer the why Scanners question enough?
Yeah, I think so. So we're gonna get into territory, and I'm not familiar with these, so I'm gonna defer to you. Have you seen the Scanner sequels?
Oh man, yeah, that's Scanners 2. When did that came out in what? Like was that the 90s?
Was it that long before Scanners 2 came out? I mean, you might be right on that. I just don't know.
Hang on, let me look it up, man. Because I do remember. I think I might have, even
91. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because I had some memory of watching that on VHS.
Wow. Somehow Scanners 2 and Scanners 3 both came out in 1991. That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I saw Scanners 3. I'm seeing it here on this.
Yeah.
Or no, here's even Scanners, the Showdown. Yeah, come on, man. You know, no. I do remember doing Scanners too, because I remember being excited about finding it at the video store and taking it home, and I was halfway through it and going, man, this is bad. You know?
Oh, okay. So you're not a fan.
Well, no, I mean it's like so much stuff, you know. I mean, I didn't think that much of the second Predator. I love the first one.
Okay.
You know, I mean that happens all the time. I mean, first Police Academy, I've probably seen that thing 80 times. The rest of them are dog crap. And everybody knows it. You know, some people might not want to say it,
right?
But it's true. You know, I mean, you know, I mean, don't you agree? I mean, it's.
I haven't seen any of those first one or sequels in years upon years, and I haven't seen all of them anyway. So, but
don't waste your time, man.
Nah, I'm probably not. I'm probably not at this point, if I'm being honest.
There's a lot better stuff to waste your time on. There's so much more.
Yeah, and you know, if I'm gonna pick a bad movie, it's gonna be a bad horror movie. So it's not gonna be a bad comedy. All right, so Scanners 2, terrible. You didn't see the other ones. Let's say you had gotten to see your own sequel. It's kind of weird how it ends, but if you had gotten to see your own sequel back in the 80s, bring back Michael Ironside. It's about all you could say.
If you were to bring back Michael Ironside,
like if you had done it in the 80s, obviously not doing one 40 years later. I don't think that we don't want a Halloween situation here with Scanners.
Is it a big deal if I do any spoiling on this show?
Yeah, you're probably going to have to spoil to talk about this part of it. So yeah, if you haven't seen Scanners, you might want to skip this part.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll try to dance around it as much as possible so I don't ruin it in case somebody. But yeah, you know, the way it ended, the original. Yeah, I mean, you would need to have Michael Ironside in it, but of course, he really isn't Daryl Revick anymore, the character he played in the original. Right. He's had that transformation, let's call it, and so you would need Ironside. Of course, Stephen Lack, you know, he was burned beyond all recognition. So it'd be ridiculous to bring him back. Yeah. So where would the story go from there? Man, I don't know. I mean, really, the only thing I could imagine since Patrick McGowan wouldn't be there, their surrogate dad, you know, the doctor. Would be that the organization that Revick had started had some other, you know, factions that were driving it besides Revick. You know, like there were other evil scanners, or there were, and now some of the sequels may have tried to do that. I don't know, man. Honestly, the Scanners 2, I don't remember anything about it. I just remember it's bad. The other ones after that, I haven't seen. But I mean, I would think it would have to be something like that. You know, scanners fighting each other, you know, or the government trying to, you know, track down scanners for government purposes, or to, you know, keep them under wraps or something along those lines. You know, I honestly, I can't imagine, you know, it's one of these movies that, you know, it does well. Oh, we made money. Let's make some more money. Let's come up with, you know, some stuff, you know, but a lot of movies, I just don't think you need to do that. You know, I mean, there's the money thing, but
right.
I mean, it's like, you know, the stories get into such a, you know, far out nonsensical, just because the story's wrapped up.
Right.
You know, there's nowhere to go with it, you know, really. And, but of course, you know, Hollywood can't leave well enough alone. You know, they have to do that. You know, I mean, if you have like a really iconic character, like say Jason,
right,
it doesn't matter, because, you know, we're just like, oh, Jason's coming. Ooh, we're scared again, you know, and it doesn't matter about the story, because people just want to see the thrill of that, you know. So it's kind of different. You expect those stories to have holes in them and to be cheesy. right?
Yep.
But I mean, Scanners is, I'd like to think, a bit more sophisticated, in its story. Um, I don't know. It's just my opinion, man. But it was the same. Like I was talking about Predator. It was the same Predator too. I mean, that was why it fell flat. Is because the story, there just wasn't story. And yeah, I just you you know I mean, but I understand. I mean, it's a business,
Yep.
and people are saying, hey, Big Macs are selling really well. Let's do this other thing that's a lot like a Big Mac, but call it a quarter pounder with cheese. you know hey, they're selling well too. Now let's make a McDLT. Hey, this didn't sell as well. Let's get that out of here.
Yeah, there you go.
Try a McRib. Just on down the line with
Right.
stuff. But that doesn't mean that it's quality.
No, you're right.
Or that it deserves to stick around or be talked about 30 years later, 40 or 50 or whatever.
Well, there you go. At least the next one you talk about the Hollywood and the money machine it wants to be. But a new way to do this is to do the remake. So who do you think you would like to put in the remake?
Wow, man. Oh man, I don't know. I mean, there's quite a few people that could probably work for that. By the way, in the new Dune, that I had never seen that kid that's in it, Chalamet.
Oh, okay, Timothy Chalamet. Yeah,
is that how you pronounce? Is it Chalamet?
I think it's. You might be right, Timothy Chalamet. That sounds right.
Yeah, I haven't heard it pronounced, but he was fantastic. I mean, he was excellent in my opinion. And it seems to me that if you were to redo Scanners, there are quite a few people that might do well in those roles. I mean, they're a bit more generic. You know what I mean? They're a little more generic. Daryl Revick role, somebody that had a bit of an evil twist to him. Sorry, no one's really coming to mind. I mean, you could. I mean, maybe Emily Blunt or whatever her name is, as the love interest.
Okay.
Why not? I mean, I like her. I think she's done pretty well with stuff. Yeah, she was in that new Rock movie. Do you see that? Jungle Cruise.
We put it on for the kids anyway. I can't say I watched the most of it, but
yeah, that was fun.
Kids enjoyed it.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just throwing her name out there, man. I don't. I mean, actually, maybe she may be a little too young for that. I mean, if we're to have the female lead in any way like Jennifer O'Neill, who was a little more like 30s ish or late 30s, she didn't look girlish. Not that it matters that much, but if we were to make it kind of like the original, I was trying to think of anybody else that. Yeah, no one's really coming to mind, man. I mean, it's there's always this temptation to like put well-known actors into stuff, and I don't know. I get bored, I mean, the other one we went to see the other night, and sorry, I'm not meaning to fly away from Scanners too much, but The Last Duel.
I heard of it, but I don't know much about it.
Man, I don't know. I'm honestly just a little tired of Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, man. I mean, I'm just like, I mean, do we have to put these guys in everything all the time just to make a buck, And they weren't that great. Adam Driver was, I think he's a far better actor than both of them. He's excellent, but the thing it was like a 2.5 hour story that could have been probably told in an hour 40.
Ooh, yeah, that's not good.
And there were a couple of battle scenes that were fun, but I mean, it's anyway. I won't digress into it, but my point is that I think with all of the streaming stuff, all the things that are going on with Netflix, all the productions that are not as reliant on box office draw, I think that we're starting to get a lot of these actors that are not, they haven't been in something that was a phenomenon, and then the studios just back them all the way. You know what I'm saying? And so as a result, you're starting to get a lot of actors who are, frankly, a lot of them are better actors. You know, they're really excellent actors. They just didn't happen to land in Good Will Hunting.
There you go.
You know, they didn't write a script and get a great director for a first film that was awesome. And then the whole career is kind of trailing off of that. And you know what I'm saying? I mean, but I personally feel, I mean, like, you want to look at the whole body of work on somebody. You know, I mean, like, look at Jack Nicholson. You know, there are a few flops in that career, but you know, 80% of it is solid. You know, and the acting's always solid. It's just sometimes the films fell flat, right? But you know, you look at, like, you know, Matt Damon. You know, there's a few good things. Should he have been chosen for the Bourne Identity? Maybe. You know, I mean, you know, I don't know. Anyway, sorry, man. I'm bitching, but I don't know. Who would you put in Scanners?
It's a good thing I don't ever think about those.
Yeah,
ever.
There's just questions that drive me nuts. That's what it is.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to actually, you know, speaking of Adam Driver, he could do the Daryl Revick thing. It'd be different.
Yeah.
You know, he would look different than Michael Irons.
Yeah,
but I could see him just because he has kind of a dark and sinister thing going on. You know,
he did the Kylo Ren thing, so
yeah. Well, I mean, he kind of, you know, without you know, being too you know, ambiguous about it, he can go both ways. You know, I mean, well, really, because he, you know,
yeah.
I mean, he has been in, you know, like The Marriage Story, for instance.
Right. Yeah.
Like
that was a good one. That was a good performance.
Yeah. I mean, he, you know, so he can really handle that. But then he's great as, you know, in the Star Wars stuff too, you know? So, yeah, yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah, that'd be tough for a casting agent. See, I wouldn't want to be a casting agent on a lot of these films that get remade, because you know that people are going to be talking to you going, really? You put this person in? This is not like the original at all. And then casting agent's going to be like, well, that's kind of the point, you know?
Right.
You know, but then a lot of people are probably like, oh, we love it. This is a whole new take. We love the original, but we wanted something different, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, but you know, you're going to have all these opinions flying everywhere about that. And, you know, but, I mean, in the end, the question is, like, does the film work?
Right.
Is there chemistry? You know, are you like, you know, you throw down $20 and you're 20 minutes into it and you're going, I'm bored. You know, this movie kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. And anyway.
All right, yeah. Chip, let's do this then. Let's give that final pitch for why people should just go watch the original Scanners, not the sequels that came out 10 years later. Not talking about a remake. Watch they go visit Cronenberg Scanners.
No, I have no pitch for the sequels. I'm sorry. I just well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. You know, I mean, I'm assuming, you know, I don't know your whole audience, but I'm assuming that a lot of them are horror and, you know, splatter buffs, right? I guess, I don't know. But you know, if you are into horror movies big time and you like horror movies, you know, then you really owe it to yourself. I mean, you know, I mean, you know, to me, I think a lot of times people get caught up in older movies and they go, well, that just doesn't look as real as the newer stuff. You know, it was the same thing when color first came out. You know that? It's like people were like, oh, but we've been so used to black and white. You know, they're like, yeah, but color is a lot closer to reality. Yeah, but black and white's the way to go. You know what I mean? And it's sort of like, you know, so, you know, you kind of, if you are into horror, you know, you sort of owe it to yourself. But, you know, if you start watching it and go, well, that doesn't look as real as something I saw on Netflix that was made last year. Well, you're kind of missing the point. I mean, it's like going into a museum and you're looking at artifacts and going, whoever carved this into stone wasn't that great a stonemason. And it's like, yeah, because he was doing it with a rock, not with a chisel.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, you have to kind of go in with an open mind about it, in my opinion. But I think Scanners holds up. Yeah, most of his stuff really does hold up. You know, I mean, some of that early stuff. It was actually funny. I don't know if I mentioned this to you last time, but they had on Criterion, they had put some old classic horror stuff on. Some of it I'd never heard of or seen. I mean, there's like an early Toby Hooper movie on there I'd never seen. It was great, but they had Rabid on
Okay.
there, which of course is early Cronenberg. Marilyn Chambers, who was a famous porn star, who was in it. Well, I hadn't seen that in a long time, and I watched it again, and I was like, boy, this is just really. It if somebody watched it, they'd go, this doesn't hold up at all. But it had a creep factor to it. It was still pretty creepy. And the same was true of The Brood, which was another one that's super creepy.
Yep.
And right down the line, I mean, all of those he did in the 80s. I remember I saw it was an article I read from Stephen King somewhere in the 80s. I think it was like in an anthology or something, but he was talking about Dino De Laurentiis had called him, who was same family that produced Dune, Raphael
Right.
De Laurentiis, right? And but he was talking about he wasn't sure who to get to direct the Dead Zone, the original Dead Zone.
Right.
And somehow they got to talking about Cronenberg, as the perfect guy. And that's one of my favorite Stephen King on films. And I love that movie, the Christopher Walken, that is, not the TV show.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I just really feel like, people kind of, I mean, you were saying, well, what's the pitch, or why should people do it? Why should you watch anything? I mean, to escape, of course, to have fun, so you can talk about it with fellow nerds like we're doing right now.
There you go.
And that's really the bottom line. Maybe you actually, learn something about your own life. It's kind of a lofty thing to say, but it does happen. In film sometimes, where you're like, you kind of realize something about yourself, like, oh, I don't know if I'd do that in that situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think with horror in particular, because you do have those people that are like, no, I can't watch any horror movies. That seeps into my subconscious and it affects me so badly, I just can't stand it. And to that I say, there's always too much of something, right? You can have too much fruit, but why do we watch stuff that is so intense and so disturbing? Why did the Greeks do it thousands of years ago? They spent much more time than we do. I mean, it was not uncommon to go to see Greek tragedy, and they'd have 2 or 3 in a row. When you're talking about 2 to 4 hour performances, right?
Ooh, yeah.
And then that would always be capped off by what was known as a satyr play, which were really raunchy comedies. So they'd watch these really deep, dark, depressing, plays, Oedipus Rex, Antigone, all these, and then right after that they'd have just a really bawdy, nasty satyr play that everybody could laugh their ass off at. And why is that? Like, why did that develop that way? And why do we still do it? Well, the reason, as far as I'm concerned, is that we all have the death impulse. We all have a tremendous fear of oblivion and dying, and what comes after, if anything, and so on. We don't know how to deal with it. None of us get solid answers about it, though some of us think we do. Okay. And on a subconscious level, we're, through art, we are experiencing these horrifying things, so our mind can grapple with that, very, dark side of being human. So, not to get too heavy on your program, but I really feel that's what it is. And that is why you can always find somebody reading Dean Koontz or Stephen King or Clive Barker or Robert McCammon or watching Walking Dead or any of that stuff. And it's because that's what's at play, and when people don't do that, when they don't have some method of catharsis to experience that, some good, solid method, then what happens is they start to internalize it and it comes out sideways, because that's the thing about the body. It will come out. So you might say, well, I'm just not into that sort of thing. I would never watch something about blood and guts. Well, that's fine, but your body says otherwise. And so it's important to have a balance between the dark and the sinister and the mysterious and the depraved and the things that we don't want to talk about, that we wouldn't talk about at the family get together. And then the other side of that, which is the absurdity, the laughing our ass off, the, uncontrollable hysterics, the absolute release of all of that pent up energy. That's being healthy. And it's reflected in our art. It's reflected in film. So, you ask about why should people go see it? Well, to me, there is something extremely valuable in the experience of that. And, I know for myself, that's why I read dark stuff as well as funny stuff. I absolutely love the plays of Harold Pinter. Harold Pinter is one of the weirdest playwrights you'll ever see. But if you watch some of the performances, it's so absurd, you're laughing your ass off, and it's why we watch Seinfeld, because we've got to take the cork out of the bottle, and let it out. And so, I feel like a lot of people don't understand that, and some people may be getting it other places besides art. Who am I to judge? Some people might go to church and through Catholic ritual have that experience, and some people might go and do it other ways, whatever. But that there is a very legitimate thing to, art and mythology, and using, the archetypes in such a way that we better understand ourselves and are able to deal with what is a very harsh reality. It's a beautiful reality too, but it's harsh. And nobody wants to deal with it, right? If we do deal with it, it's in a very kind of on the surface way. You know what I mean? We're not
Yep.
scuba diving because it's too much. It's too much to deal with. But if you watch it on film or read it in a book, you can, in a very, sideways way, or a way that's non-threatening, in a vicarious way, you can experience it. Right. And so anyway, Scanners, why should you watch it? For all those reasons. And understand too, if you are a film buff out there, or if you're into that sort of thing, you want to look at Scanners and go, oh, wow, there are a lot of films that probably would not have happened if this one didn't happen, and, so yeah, a lot of the, the head exploding thing, that was probably the first time that had been done in quite so graphic a way in film.
I would think so.
Yeah, but there have been how many shows now have had heads
Oh
exploding?
yeah,
All over the place, right?
right.
So it's yeah, I hope I answered that. But yeah, I hope you're tracking me. It's like, yeah, man, I think too, some people are afraid of the stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's too much.
Yeah.
And that is really understandable too in the last 30 years or so, because everything has gotten more hyper real. It used to be that, like, if you read classic horror, I mean, real classic, Frankenstein, Dracula, darker stuff, read Edgar Allan Poe, Lovecraft, and so on, that it had this element of, hey, we're telling you about this dark stuff, but, really it's a story. Don't worry about it. It's a story.
Yeah.
That kind of feeling. But things have gotten more and more and more ultra real because viewers and readers have gotten more sophisticated over time. And so they kind of know, like in a Walking Dead, whoever's doing the makeup, they're going, we can't make these like Night of the Living Dead looking zombies. Nobody will buy it.
Right.
Right. And that's what I mean. It's changed culturally where it has to get, even the tech, I mean, you look at a lot of stuff that's shot in like 4K now, or has, like, if you have a television that can handle 4K, and stuff has been filmed in it, you can watch it in 4K. There have been a lot of actors that have been complaining about this because a lot of actors who have been aging, it doesn't matter how much makeup you cake on them. If you got it in 4K, you're seeing every nook and cranny of their face, and they don't like that because that's like, you're showing all my imperfections. I mean, there have been actors that have been complaining about this, right?
Wow.
And but that's what I mean. The tech has gotten more and more and more ultra real, and you can get into the ethics of it. I don't know if that's such a good thing for our kids to see that. And it's like, well, good or not, it's here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but keep your kids away from it if you want to, but they're gonna get exposed to it sooner or later. It's a lot better to explain to them, so I do not have kids. You do, so I'm not going to get into like telling people what they should tell their kids because that's a ridiculous position for me. But but you know what I'm saying. I mean, it's I think that people kind of need to be prepared for what they're going into. Man, did I tell you last time about Saw? Did I tell you about that?
Oh no, okay, we got a Saw story.
Dude, this is quick, man, but you'll probably have a good laugh on this one. So, I was divorced from my first wife, and I was dating around, and I started dating this girl, and she was really into Stephen King, and so she was like, "Oh, well, I'd love to go see this movie Saw," and it was like the first Saw movie, right? And I didn't know what it was. I hadn't heard anything about it. I thought it was like some kind of home improvement thing, right? Or something, So we're sitting in the theater, it starts in with the torture room and the killing and everything. And I'm like, what the hell? Who the hell am I dating here, man? We're like on the first date out, man. But then I watched it and I was like, damn, that's actually a really good horror flick, man.
Yep.
And it was weird too, because I was so used to Carrie Elways from Princess Bride.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was used to him from that. I'm like, wow, I'm glad he finally got another gig. But but anyway, I was taken aback by that film, even though I was an adult when it came out. But it was because I didn't know what to expect from it.
Right.
And so my whole point is that it might be good to let people know, hey, by the way, this is a horror movie. Yeah.
True. True.
Kind of
That's
brace
fair.
yourself for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know, man. What so when did you see Scanners for the first time?
Like I said, probably within the definitely after mid 2000s sometime. So it was in the last 10 to 15.
What made you want to go watch it?
Probably because I had heard about it on probably some horror documentary I was watching, and more than likely, and they had mentioned it, and I had seen that head explosion before. Yeah, and I was like, well, I need to see the movie that has that. Yeah,
you had to watch it after that.
Yeah, I had to see the movie that had that head explosion. Because and that thing happens like within the first 10 minutes. Like it's quick.
Yeah, kind of let you know, here's what's coming. Here's what we got planned for the evening.
Yeah. But all right, Chip, I think you did a good job. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this one up. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, and you can list the website again. And if people want to find me, they can go to chipsebastian.com.
It's Sebastian. And on there, you'll find my voice reel and my on camera reel. And I blog, and I have films that I've done before, and just a bunch of stuff. The short film, I'm hoping, like I said, will be out before Christmas. And that should be on the website as well. It'll end up being a pretty cool little film. We actually did the finishing shot the other day, and it was a drone shot. So we actually have an opening on the film where the shot's coming into the cemetery, right. And so it's I can't wait to see it, man. It's going to be pretty cool. But that's going on, and please check it out when it's out. Just stay on the lookout for it. And so thank you for having me on again. I hope it was a good show for you. I hope I was thorough, and
oh yeah, absolutely. Always Chip.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And it's actually good to do a horror flick, since I know that's your first love and everything. Yeah. So absolutely, man.
All right, and as always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at ynfmoviepod. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to come back next week, as I'll have a new movie and a new guest, and who knows, that may become your next favorite movie. You guys take care. I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.